if I was a rapper, what do you think my name would be? I already know, but what do you think mine?
Oh, fuck. We started, didn't we?
What do you think my rapper
I've been
name
chilling this whole time. Your rapper name? Damn.
Yeah.
All right,
if I was a SoundCloud rapper, what would it be?
Rocket Man. You can't go with anything other than that.
No, it'd be Little Ass.
What?
Little Lil.
I think that's a little
ass.
Too much personal information.
Oh. How about
I was so zoned out as to what. Okay, just to be fair, I'm having a big raid night with some people. Video game terms is a big thing going on after
in
this.
Mo's, baby.
I mean, it's in my head. That's not really Mo's. Destiny 2, but
It's in Mo Light. What about a Big Hunk?
Again, I don't know how true. I guess your name doesn't necessarily have to fit you.
I mean, a lot of rap artist names don't necessarily have anything to do with them.
I'm trying to think of I've heard some weird rap.
Ice Cube. He's
that's
not an
just
Ice
cool.
Cube,
See?
but he is cool. That's where you got it from. Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not good at coming up with names on the spot. I always have to ask people their opinions before I can even give mine. I can't think for myself.
This is true.
It is very true. That's why I couldn't do a podcast on my own either. There's several things in this world that you can't do on your own, like raiding and Destiny. That's what I'm going to do tonight.
Hanging out with the cat.
No, you can hang out with a cat by yourself.
Well, the cat's there.
But do they count?
Do cats?
It's like the act of hanging out with cat. You are the one person that is filling this activity.
True.
I don't know, man.
You can tell, we're a little tired.
We are sleepy. We're just chilling today. We got a fun conversation. Hope you enjoyed that.
Last night we were partying it up. Bro.
Yeah, we're getting to a certain point in our group that we've talked about, not the Dungeon Chronicles podcast or actual play podcast, but one of our players is leaving, much like how I did about 2-3 years ago. For the same campaign, to let Ryan do a revamp of his world, and then we re-entered into it. Same person joined back up. Me and him, we're the OG. He was playing a barbarian. And every so
often, a couple name drops come out from the last campaign. They're all like, what?
It was kind of, I was like, fun. I guess he was excited too. But it's around that time where everybody's starting to figure out what they'd want to do with their life, where they want to go, where they want to be. And, our player's like, I'm going to go to this location. It's a place that I can see myself living, seems super comfortable. Weather's going to be better than where we're at.
Oh, yeah.
And they're leaving.
Yeah, so we had a little get together, a little farewell. Granted, they're going to be here one more weekend, but they're not going to be able to hang out that weekend.
Well, the last hurrah has to be the session,
True.
That's how it was for me.
A big final session. Actually, no, it wasn't for you. You couldn't come. You were going to come, and then you couldn't come last minute. And so I just read the little write-up that I wrote for him, which we've talked about before.
I think I tried to come, but I did not have a car at that time. But on the flip side of things, what if we're trying to find new people?
New players. You're trying to reel them on in. There's someone that's been seeing, you got a big group of friends. You all maybe go to class together, something like that. And part of that group played D&D with you. And then there's one guy out there. It's like every Friday, these guys all go to Joe's house and then are there for like 4 or 5 hours. And
I don't know what they do.
Home.
They summon like demons.
Yeah, they talk every so often. I hear them talking about this weird place, and I don't really understand it. So it could be, it can be a little weird when you're hearing about someone else's D&D game and you have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
I had this perspective exactly in theater. Because I didn't play D&D when I was in high school. And I've told this story before. One of my friends was like, yeah, look at this map I'm drawing for D&D. And at that point, to me, I was like, this is pinnacle nerddom. I don't think I'd ever play that. Oh, how ironic.
It is easy to make that judgment for sure.
It is.
I don't think you're alone.
Well, it's just weird because I was a theater student and theater is basically just the pure... If you think about it, theater's nerdier than D&D. You're LARPing.
You kind of LARP in D&D a little bit.
Yeah, but like full costume shit. We got a stage, lighting. So
it's different kind of nerdiness. Yeah,
that's my explanation for it.
My girlfriend has told this story though before, and she's not sure if it's true. I don't know if it's true, but it's fun to say. She says there were these people that were getting into D&D, that are like big name people. I don't know. But she said they were getting into D&D like when it first came out a long time ago in like the 80s, whatever. And she said that, they'd go over to this guy's house, and the wife was getting concerned because every Saturday, every Friday night, her husband would just leave, just disappear, wouldn't respond to phone calls, whatever. He wouldn't really say where he was going. He's like, I'm just going to go hang out with some friends. And so she started getting really concerned. Like, what's
Is he seeing somebody?
Yeah, what's going on with my hubby? And so she followed him one night, followed him to a house. And he went in, all the blinds were closed shut, and other people started following it as well. So she's thinking, oh, there's like a group, like sexual activity. She's just like, something's going on in there. And so she, eventually confronts her husband about like, hey, what are you guys doing? I followed you. Oh, what's going on in that house? And he's like, I can invite you. Do you want to come?
Why can't he just tell her? Is he embarrassed?
I don't know.
Okay, at that point, it's like, fix your relationship. Tell her what you're going to do, unless you're just embarrassed by it. Then
to be fair, this was during the Satanic Panic, back then, so maybe it was a little, you're summoning demons,
you
whatever.
Roll polygons and imagine things happening.
But yeah, eventually he's like, it's, we all sit around and pretend we're in a different world and fight things. And she was like, that's weird, but sure.
It's weird, but sure.
I think that's probably what most people's opinion are on it.
Yeah, even playing it, that's weird, but sure. Pretty much fits it. There's
also, I mentioned the Satanic Panic, there's also like a stigma behind it too, where people are like, oh, you're summoning demons. It's like the Harry Potter kind of thing, as well as some older generation.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, aren't really okay with it for one reason or another, showing magic, whatever. But so how do you get a new player in that has these stigmas or has these, they think it's too nerdy for them? How do you go about doing it? First of all,
damn it,
he's Braxton.
I was formulating a way to get into it myself, but I couldn't figure out the syntax. He's Ryan.
And we're the Dungeon Crawl. Thanks for crawling in here with us. We're gonna start talking about how to get a new player into D&D, or Pathfinder, just tabletop RPGs in general, because they can be difficult.
Okay, well, since you said that first, I will say my opinion right away. Don't play D&D first.
Really?
Try Powered by the Apocalypse first. I want to see what more people who start playing RP-heavy games first make D&D turn into later on in different generations. So maybe this isn't a how-to, this is a social experiment.
What if you got all your buddies are already playing D&D?
If they already want to play D&D. In that case, go ahead. Or maybe you guys all do a one shot. And a way to get them in is to make everybody in a new experience. And you play Powered by the Apocalypse, and you've got your friends who are tabletop RPG veterans, or they're used to it, but they're playing a new thing, so they're new. And your new person won't be as anxious because they're learning alongside other people.
True, that's definitely an option. Or they could be even more intimidated. No one knows what they're doing, so you can't ask a question.
That's true. Very true.
So there's a lot of ways you can take it. For me, I think the first and foremost thing, you need to start simple, which Powered by the Apocalypse is definitely simple, or simpler. So that's definitely an option.
Yeah,
but I think
it's simple, but
if you show up with this book, this gigantic 300-page book, and just give it to the player, say this is what you had to read and understand.
Read all this. Let's go.
The player's handbook. Let's get going. That will overwhelm them. That's a lot of rules.
Yeah.
And I would say that goes double for Pathfinder. I mean, this is like a 300-page book. I think literally the Pathfinder book is 600 pages. So that's even harder for new players to get into these things. If they say, I have to understand this, and they realize, oh, wait, you also have this book. And I could keep doing this, that book, and this book. I mean, it can get to be a lot of pages and very daunting if you start showing them all these different things. And I even say new players, if you're watching this video, it also could be something where you realize that you find yourself, you don't even have a friend that's helping you. You just say, I type in Dungeons & Dragons and I get 20 different books.
Well, I would say, like, if it's somebody that you don't know that much, the process might be, okay, here is the player's handbook. Yeah, maybe you're a good DM, GM, well, in this case, DM, and you're like, go to this page, and this page. That's what you'll be interested in. And like, oh, don't I have to pick a class? Yeah, just read through. If there's nothing you like, let me know.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Your contingency there is if they are not clicking with anything, then you go, well, hold on. Can I interest you in a little bit of better everything? And then you're like, here's Tasha's and Xanathar's guide. Look at the classes in there. So like, introduce it like one at a time.
Give them the caveat of, hey, it might be a little tougher.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people talking about getting new players in to avoid spellcasters, and it's understandable because it can be a little daunting. But as we talked about in our Pathfinder videos, if a player is super interested in this particular style of play, and you say, how about you play a barbarian or a fighter first, and then play a spellcaster, that might right there might kill their enjoyment for the game.
The gravity of the choice definitely changes depending on the length of the thing you're going to do. I would assume it's going to be a one shot.
Sure. I mean, especially I think the level 2 is also important. I think spellcaster at level 1, that's fairly simple For the most part, it's, but if you're dropping into a game that's been going and your players like, hey, or your friends are like, hey, I have a new opening in my group, you want to pop in, and you guys are like level 20 or something, or level 15, 10, whatever, maybe that's probably a good reason to avoid a spellcaster at that point.
I think that's a really good point. Should they start at level 1?
I think most new players probably should, at the minimum level 3.
I would almost say don't start at level. I would say start at level 2 and level up within the first or second session, so that they right away can get a good experience of the difference between level 1 and 2. They don't have to make the big decision of their third level option. Some classes have a first level option, so here you go. And then the sessions, and you're like, okay, you've played at a low level, level 2 for a bit. I will now teach you how to level up. And then they get blasted again with a really, really powerful jump from 2 to 3. So they get a great idea about how leveling up is. And I think that might be a pretty good encapsulated experience of
it. Could be cool. Also, what you're talking about made me think of, this might not be a good option, but I think continuing from this would be a good option, is there's this thing called level 0 play, where it's like before, like basically peasants going around and doing peasant things. And then you level up from there. So it's like a full progression. So you could start with, I think the Ravenloft book also talks about like flashbacks.
Yeah.
You could have flashbacks with a group of characters, group of new people, and have them be like level 3 or something. They could play test an idea that they were like, this could be fun. I don't know if I want to do a full campaign, but I'm not sure, They could do this flashback in your world and your campaign, and then that way they can see if this class is something they'd want to play long term. Because it's tough to tell just by reading it in a player's handbook.
Something I never realized is that you don't have to start a campaign or a one-shot. Couldn't you just say, hey, we're going to do one combat encounter right now?
That's an interesting point, because I actually wrote down here in my notes that another way to keep it simple is to, if you have someone that's mildly interested, or not A, I already said the A, B, doesn't really know what D&D is, doesn't play games, whatever, there's interested in what you guys are up to, you could just run a very simple improv
encounter,
exercise,
I guess, would be
them.
The best thing to do.
Yeah, just do a small exercise with, maybe they're stuck in a prison. They see the group of like a patrol of guards are walking by, and you got to get the keys, or something small. There's a group of goblins. You're in the forest, and you got to kind of sneak around them, and then maybe one of them spots you. And don't start with the dice at all. Just do this little bit of encounter, and then ask the player, what do you want to do? And they're like, okay, I want to try to, I'm watching the goblin walk by. When they walk past, I'm going to try to sneak around out of here to say, okay. Then you hand them a D20 and say, all right, roll that die. And you kind of slowly start introducing these extra die. And then maybe the goblin attacks them at some point. All right, here's the D20, roll that. Then roll this D6. And just slowly start avoid the character sheet at all. Because I've heard Sly Flourish, we like.
You be the character sheet.
Yeah.
You're the game.
Sly Flourish, we've shot a few times. Great guy. Has mentioned that the character sheet looks like an IRS form.
It kind of does.
And it kind of does.
Fill out this bubble here. Add 2 if you're single or not.
It can definitely be a little overwhelming for a new player that's definitely never played, RPGs or anything along those lines. So that's definitely a good way to maybe see if they're interested in this idea. So I think getting a player into the experience as fast as possible and then see if they enjoy it is the easiest way to get into it, because there's a lot of numbers and minutia you could get caught up with otherwise.
I think that's an interesting point about game design, though. A lot of praise comes into games that use the human brain and habits naturally. So there's the caveat of you're somebody who plays video games, you have a controller, you have the reflexes of pulling triggers, pressing buttons and stuff, common control schemes and whatnot. You jump into a Souls game, Dark Souls or something, and you're immediately running around and there's a gold orb on there. Your gamer brain might already know to push forward on the thumbstick without it even telling you. Go there and press the button that's on the bottom of the 4 buttons that you have right there, and you've picked up an item without the game even telling you how to do it. Ryan just there said he's got their character sheet or whatever they want to do in their brain. Let's pretend they're a fighter. What do you want to do? Just making them interact with the world as a human. It's like, okay, well, I want to kill this guy. And then you're like, codes, bleep, 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 boop. Here's this D20, press this button and try to hit him. That's actually a really good idea to not think of that at all.
Then kind of continuing from that, or kind of skipping a few steps here, but let's say you have the character sheet, they've made it your or pre-gen character, whatever, and you're in the game. similar concept where you're not teaching them necessarily the mechanics, you're not overwhelming them with a bunch of mechanics straight off the bat. All the attacks and what your different ability modifiers do and what yada, yada, yada. Because again, I think that can overwhelm a new player. Get them in the game with a group of players and you guys are having fun. And I think what you got to stick in the player's brain is say, tell me what you want to do. What's your intent? What are you trying to do in this scene right now? And then they describe their intent. They want to try to persuade the barkeep to give them a discount or something. Say, okay, well, you see a little modifier on your sheet that says persuasion. Roll a d20 and add that to it and start getting them to just focus on the intent, and the mechanics will come later. So I think the easiest way to learn any tabletop RPG is just play the goddamn game.
Yeah.
Because it can be, I mean, even when we started looking at Pathfinder, it's like, oh my God, there's so much going on here. Then once you really start getting into it and playing, it's like, oh, it's actually not as complicated as it might seem from a,
still is a bit more than
view.
D&D. It's like translating a language. I would say going from human brain desire and action into D&D is a simpler language, like English to Spanish maybe. And then when you get into Pathfinder, it's like going from maybe English to Russian. There's a couple of more loops you got to go to, a couple of different bonuses and letters that you got to add on here and there until your action is translated into the game. And it's that act of going through the funnel of translation that I think makes it difficult. Like the first time I played and read through the Player's Handbook was in high school, I think. I never actually played. This was the first time I read. And I think it did really feel very much like reading Pathfinder, where I was just like, oh
my God, what am I reading?
Bunch of ifs, if, then this, then that, and whatnot. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Why are glaives and polearms not good? And it made me very sad. And I can now pull back on that and really just think about it. If we're ever to introduce somebody, how could you help somebody as a player while playing with them? Is it too much to do the DM's job and like grab dice, reach over the table? I feel like that's a bit too hands-on.
I think you want to
let the DM do that.
I think you want to show what tabletop role-playing games are all about and not how to play them. Like, just kind of be the example, emulate.
Yeah,
don't necessarily take the spotlight away from them, but maybe kind of do. You said the DM's job. You could do a quote-unquote DM's job by helping shine the spotlight on them every so often. Like, say, ask them a question in character, or invite them to something. Say, hey, I'm gonna go and intimidate this asshole. He's being a jerk to me. You want to come with me and be my backup? Just get them in the game, or something we talked about in the last episode. I think was the last episode Avatar? No, 2 episodes ago.
2 episodes ago.
In our Avatar episode, we talked about how they have this thing called connections.
Ooh.
And you could have connections with a new player. So you're going to a veteran play group and you're a little overwhelmed. You know the players, but you don't really know how the system works. So you could work with a buddy of yours and say, hey, how do our characters know each other?
Yeah.
How am I getting into the game, working along those lines? And that way you at least have a buddy to bounce off of.
I think RP is something that really needs somebody to help you out with.
Especially at first,
unless you guys are all just like theater kids, which now it really makes sense why theater is a group of people that typically lean into D&D. I guess it depends on how many nerds are in the group, how many people are interested in that. So
voice actors too,
Yeah. I think a portion of the thing that a player can do to assist somebody is, the DM's very much like the paragraph that details how things work. Mm-hmm. And then, sometimes below a paragraph, there's an example, like a wording. And Pathfinder has a couple of these.
Yeah.
Where they have like dialogue back and forth. So DM ask your veteran player to do something, hopefully they do something simple. And then the new player has an example of that thing. And then the DM asks the new player what do they want to do? So now they've got like a bank of experience to go off of, the DM's direction and their heart's hopes and dreams.
Yeah. As a kid, because I'm thinking about comparing it to other board games. Let's say you're the new player, likes board games, likes Pandemic, some of the other stuff, and there's always a little cheat sheet that says these are the actions you can do on your turn. This is what you can do, and it's like 4 actions or 4 words. You can flip it around. It's got a few other things.
And pronounce and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, well, in D&D, it's like I have my whole character sheet, and as I'm sure you're a new player, and I'm sure the incentivization that you were heard or told was you can do anything. Anything on your sheet you can do. You have abilities that help you do some of those things, but you can literally be and do whatever you want. That, I think, can be, it's just like, you're in school and they say, this assignment, we left it pretty loose for you to decide what you want to do. Like, I because the guardrails are off, I have no idea what I want to do.
Yeah.
So it can be a little daunting and overwhelming to just kind of get dropped into this world.
Well, let's set a few things. Like if you've got somebody who has never played a tabletop RPG ever, maybe they play video games, they read books, they have some things that they enjoy, and you're friends and you know what they like. Okay, I don't know, let's do a little test. Let's pretend I've never played. How would you get me to want to play D&D?
So you don't want to right now?
I'm not too sure. It's like, I've always heard it's just a bit nerdy, and I don't know. I like having things come to me, like when I read books, certain characters I like, but I don't know. There's like a lot of stuff in my head.
Do you like any fantasy stuff?
Yeah.
You like Lord of the Rings? Or like
Lord of the Rings
is
cool. More like higher fantasy stuff's interesting.
Give me an example of some of the high fantasy that you enjoy.
Well, I mean, lately I've been playing Final Fantasy 14.
Okay. Yeah.
So like that's super high fantasy though.
So would you ever want to? Well, you have a character in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I played Dragoon.
And you're walking around. You got your big lance and stuff. It's super fun.
Yeah.
Imagine that, when the NPCs and the characters are talking to you in the story, imagine, those questions and those responses you have as the character every so often in Final Fantasy 14. Imagine if those actually did something.
And had dialogue for more than half the beginning.
Yeah, imagine if they were meaningful options, and then you could actually make a big difference. I mean, your character makes a big difference in Final Fantasy 14, but imagine the world revolved around the choices that you were making, and the story was pulling off.
So are you writing all of it?
Yeah, more often than not.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll work with you to help you figure out what your backstory is, and we'll integrate that to the story, and it'll come in. It'll be really important, impactful. I know the mechanics can be a little overwhelming.
Well, I mean, going back to that's what I want to say. I feel like they can be underwhelming because in Final Fantasy 14 you've got a hotbar with like 36 different things that you can do, but in D&D it's you do one thing and then everybody else gets to do stuff. So I feel like I'm going to be waiting around a lot.
There is definitely some way. I'm not going to lie with you on that, but it's usually very like the raids and dungeons and stuff. It's very tactable.
You lost me. I'm done.
No, there's a lot of tactics you can work with your group, and you can figure out if you like healing or you're the dragoon, so you're up there fighting to the death while you got your healer back there who's making sure they're keeping you alive, but they're also making sure they're keeping everyone else alive. It can get pretty tense, get pretty scary.
So it is pretty similar, I guess.
Yeah, there's some, there's definitely less abilities you can do, but if you think about it with D&D, it's literally your imaginations. You can do whatever you want, really, in D&D.
All right. Okay.
You want to try it out?
I'm interested.
We'll do a little one shot, and I'll help you make a little small character.
Do I have to read much?
No. We'll just dive right in.
Oh shit. Okay. I was gonna make a joke that in Final Fantasy 14 you have to read a fuckload.
You do.
So
yes, you were prepared.
I'm good for it, but
or you just skip all the cutscenes.
I was surprised. Like, oh shit, I don't have to read. Yeah, let's do it. My natural instinct was like, oh fuck. Okay, yeah.
But now,
let's go.
So let's say we don't need to role play this one out, but let's say that character, Braxton's character, there was at least interested.
Yeah, there's an easy way to get in
games, liked fantasy. Let's say they don't know anything about games, only about fantasy. Maybe
they're just friends with you and they want to hang out.
Just friends. You met him in class, whatever. Cool. And you're good buddies with them. So how can you incentivize them to get in the game and start playing? I think there's a few options. One is to literally just invite them over for a game night and say it's just gonna be us having fun, and then say, hey, we're gonna play a little D&D, or they can even just watch you guys play for the ones and say, I have a sheet here if you want to hop in and play, and just hop in whenever you feel like it. Just do like a small little one shot.
Yeah.
Or, and I think this can both be a plus and a con. First, I would say think about what got you interested in D&D in the first place. Now, I know this is, if you like games, this is definitely going to be
I'm just thinking about the internet. There's some interesting things for why people play D&D.
Right. But the other option is to use some actual play podcasts, and maybe not have them watch the whole thing, because I think that can be daunting to say, hey, you want to get the Critical Role?
Matt Mercer, we're going to do that.
Or just see that there's, thousands of hours to watch. That can be a little overwhelming. But maybe something smaller you can watch, like Dimension 20. There's like 10 episodes or something. And just say, hey, watch like the first 2 episodes if you like that. When you're doing something, that's what D&D is like. It's just us sitting around, goofing around, saying silly jokes.
Yeah.
You do something like that. Or you could do what we just did and just, sit down with your friend and talk them through, hey, this is something we really enjoy. I think you'd have a blast. I know it may seem like a lot, it may seem like a really nerdy thing, but there really is a place for everybody at the table for this type of game. So
it's reverse psychology. You make it their idea. In front of them, you're always drawing crazy maps, writing weird stories, type on your laptop. And then long enough, they're just like, what are you always doing? And you're like, well, I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad you asked.
Let them harbor the interest. Or you can say, hey, I'm ordering pizza for a lot of my friends about to play D&D tonight. If you want some pizza,
Yeah, you could do what I did.
Bribe them.
Because I was really nervous.
You did bribe us.
I did. I was very nervous that no one else was going to want to play. But luckily they all did. Yeah. But I said, hey, I'll have food here. I'll have some pizza if you guys want to eat. So that's,
I still remember the day.
To bribe
I guess it
people.
hasn't been that long, but
yeah, let's go rock down memory lane. What was it like for you?
Well, I was super nervous too, but I'm excited because I finally get to play this character that I've had for like a few years now. I play a warlock. I don't know. Hudson was there, so it's somebody I knew was aware of. Yes. He at least picked from a pool of people I knew, and your girlfriend who I don't think I'd met yet at the time.
No, and I had one more friend that you didn't know.
Yeah.
Either.
So, I mean, I was used to meeting people in theater and stuff like that. So, you know, it's no different than not knowing your script and jumping in. But he's like, okay, come to this place. I was super stoked because his friend I hadn't hung out with in a while that I always liked hanging out with. I drive up to his place, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, am I going to be first here? What's going on?
You didn't have dice yet or anything, right?
No, I didn't have dice. You got all the dice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had my character sheet and just knock. Jump on in. And there's a little table sitting down there. I see some dice all around. And pizza too, so I munch on that a bit, and then we sit down and
get into the world.
You got into it pretty much right away. I think your first whole thing was you guys are in, haha, Lamau.
Yes.
And
I did a Matt Colville's in thing.
There was a weird disease encounter that happened pretty much right away that was stressful, and I think he did good at making me interested. Like, I want to know what this is. I want to know what's going on.
Was I playing music then? I don't remember if I had
there's no music set up. Just nothing. We were just sitting. You had some paper. I think we had a GM screen. And I think pretty much everybody was chatting and good to go.
Yeah, I tried to do a lot. I guess something else is DM, so you might not have this luxury, but I tried to take a lot of the. There's not much of a financial burden to get in the unless you're buying all the books, of course. But I bought all the dice for everybody. I had I printed out sheets and paper for everybody to get ready. I got the table, everything all set up.
Everything was very prepped. Like, it was just sit down and we went. So I think that was a really good experience.
Definitely helps. And something I was going to talk about here is getting new players in there. He said he had a character sheet. He was excited to make his character ready to go. I think everyone else, most of the other players did not, because I was worried about them making their own character.
Did we do a session 0?
No, we did not. But I was overwhelmed. I was worried that they were going to do exactly, go to the player's handbook or try to make a character. Because D&D Beyond didn't exist at this time. Orc Pub did. It was like the D&D
I used Orc Pub.
Yeah, it did get axed for the most part. But I was worried that they were going to try to make a character and be overwhelmed, which is probably what most do. So I found some pre-gen characters, and I kind of helped make some of my own that I thought would fit in well. So I think that's a good question to ask. Do you think pre-gen characters are good for new players to get into it? Because I think it takes them maybe out of the game a little bit because they didn't make it themselves. They're not super attached to it, but B, it just gets them into the game fast.
Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of player you are. There's those like Timmy and blah, 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 those types of players. I don't know that off the top of my head, but for me, I really enjoy identifying with something in the game. So making a character is really important for me.
Yeah, you love character creation, just period in games.
Just period. So I'm the type of person that would always prefer to make their own character unless I helped you make the pre-made.
Right.
Objectively, it's quicker, but I think you need to talk to your friends, have that session 0 and be like, what do you want out of a game? It's like, I want to feel really powerful. I want to make a character in development. I just want to do a lot of damage. So then either make this person a pre-gen character, a fighter that is really great, and you get some builds online. You go, Braxton, make your own character, just show it to me. Make a short backstory.
Or make it in session 0 together.
Yeah, or make it in session 0 together.
Option.
And get other people interested in making your character. And the other person, you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to plop some really cool magic items around. If you poke around a bit, here's your pre-gen character. Just keep an eye out for hints and secrets and whatnot.
And it's not to say that pre-gens will, I said, might take players out, and it definitely has that possibility. If you don't
work better. Some people don't want to make their own characters because they're not as confident in making a fun, good person. We
had a player in our last campaign who I gave a pre-gen character, JJ. That's the character's name. The player's name. Yeah, it was a pre-gen character that I handed to him, and he got more into than I was ever expecting. Seemed to really enjoy the game. He died and got resurrected and put an axe, crossed out over his sheet and changed, became an oathbreaker and was writing down like crazy. Really cool. And I never would have expected that to happen. And so it's definitely possible for a character to get attached to their pre-gen character and get into it. We've even had this with recently in this campaign. Phil, he was not necessarily a pre-gen character, but I guess pre-gen I made it myself
Yeah.
for him. Because you didn't really have time to make a new character or make a character. So I was like, hey, this fits in well with the world
It
that's
definitely
going on
seemed
right
like
now.
it was just his character. He played it really well.
Yeah, he was having a blast, super into it, and was there for a little bit. And
Well, take a look at FromSoft fans. It's like, what's their favorite game? And I guess I'll divide it between not Sekiro and Sekiro, because in every other character, you make your character. If their favorite is Sekiro, try to isolate whether it was just Imperial Japan or not, and they have a waifu in there in that game or something. Or do they prefer playing like a Witcher game where they have a character and they see them develop and they go into their shoes, or do they like making their own character that they can put themselves into?
interesting.
So you can always ask them what kind of games they like.
It's an interesting question to mull over, because I find myself, I enjoy games where I have a character made for me because I feel like the story fits that character better.
Yeah.
And then if I make one, it doesn't usually. But D&D is obviously the opposite. If your DM works with you, then they can make it work together.
I think it depends in that
To
case.
consider.
Like, is the world the focus, or is the character and the stories the focus? Because oftentimes I always just prefer making my own character, because it's hard writing a compelling story. So if I can at least just enjoy dressing my own character up and doing I will literally spend like 8 hours in character creation.
You do.
But in the case of like The Witcher, I mean,
unfortunately, you usually miss your refund window if you find out you don't.
yeah, that's
enjoy the
always a
game.
consideration. If I know a game has a refund policy or on Steam, but it has character creation, I have to put the timer like in front of me just to make sure. There's been a couple 158-minute games that I've done. But yeah, I think there's never really a like black and white.
Right.
Precon's better or make your own characters better. Like, hell, you could make stats for them and then say make a character around this.
I did mention that little sheet for board games. You could, in theory, make a little sheet. You have a preaching character, then make a small like index card of like, hey, these are your key abilities. These are your key important things that you're gonna want to pay attention to. Just keep that in mind. I think also something for new players is to incentivize them asking questions.
Ooh, yeah.
Because it can be very, you're watching all these veteran players bounce around the table and you're just kind of sitting there. So say, hey, if you don't understand something or you're in combat, you don't know what's going on, feel free to ask us a question or say, I love when my players say, hey, would my character know this? Does my character know about this stuff? My character
That question, I always find
this.
it so awkward, but there's no other way to facilitate your character saying it in character other than asking the DM, unless your DM gave you like a shitload of stuff to study about the world and said, memorize this, because I will not tell you unless you make a good history check
And
or
the
something.
player goes, I say that to the group.
There's really no other way to do it. I don't know. I had something I wanted to say, but I can't remember. Oh, if your entire group is new, there's kind of a pitfall with liking your players asking stuff. I think the common mentality as a DM would be, okay, I'm going to stop talking and hope they ask me questions, or I'll give them my blah, 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 blah. What do you do? And they just sit there and they don't do anything. You do have to push them and give them a few things for them to ask questions. So don't just like plop it in their lap and hope that it happens. That's a tough thing to do. Not that we need to get into that sort of philosophy, but it can definitely be awkward, new players. So I don't know. Hopefully some of the things that we've mentioned will.
Yeah, my closing thing is to, if you're playing D&D and you don't want to maybe you're even new DM as well, use the starter beginner box. I mean, it's there for a reason. They do use pre-gens. And what I not like about their pre-gens, yes. What I like about the beginner box pre-gens is that they tie them into the story. They have their bonds, their flaws and stuff are all tied in. Like, I love my brother, and the brother shows up in the game and stuff. It's very cool. So that could be a really easy way to get players in. But as we talked about in our Pathfinder beginner box episode, there are some pitfalls that beginner boxes fall into on relying too much on combat and not as much on roleplay, which is a whole extra pillar of whatever tabletop game you're playing, because it's tabletop a role playing game. You gotta have that RP in there. So definitely keep that in mind and say, hey, even if you're not enjoying this, there's still more to the game out there.
I was hoping when we did our little scene there that all you were gonna do is you can play as a warlock. You gotta go for the visceral, right for the throat. Like, oh shit, yeah. If a game is a warlock, I don't play it. Destiny 2, sorry, warlocks are stupid, but they do get every good exotic in the entire freaking game. I almost did. I don't think I cursed, or you did, this entire episode.
Unless you kind of asked. I did say ass, like right at the beginning.
Is ass a curse?
I don't think it's on like the TV no words, but
it is.
It used to be.
Yeah,
but a lot of things used to be on that. But yeah, that's getting new players in. There's a lot of stuff in these beginner boxes. Definitely recommend you check them out. Give them a read through if you want to get some new players in. They offer, I mean, especially literally just the starter set rulebook. It's the player's handbook condensed to what's most important. So you can just hand them this or do a little flip through. I think this is also free. This specific little SRD is free on Wizards. So
and for you Pathfinder peeps, so it almost double down on the do stuff for your characters and your players, mechanics wise. At the beginning, like add the bonuses for them and then start weaning them off it, because there's just a lot of stuff to bounce around in your head if you're not running through a literally perfect VTT for them to just have everything happen in front of them. Pathfinder is. I feel like it's a bit harder.
First edition, I would have said you could, obviously you could do all the stuff we said, but you could have also played the Pathfinder games that exist.
Is that 1-to-1?
Fairly close. I mean, obviously there's some things that aren't in there, but it's pretty good rendition. They even show the dice rolling in like the little chat box and stuff. So you can get a pretty good idea, but obviously that's all first edition stuff, so it doesn't really apply to second.
You know, I know Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be D&D adjacent. That was pretty evident by the beta tests they did. Surfaces were bonkers. It was very much Divinity Original Sin, just with some dice thrown out there. But I almost think it's going to be like the Minecraft of D&D. Like you can do everything. It might be the penultimate virtual tabletop for a full game experience if they allow for modding. Like if they keep it almost 1-to-1.
I think they will allow for modding.
I think that's going to be like
there will have to be a little bit of a cap on it. Might be my initial guesses will be similar to say a Total War Warhammer game, because they are licensed by who makes the Warhammer stuff? I can't for the life of me remember. Yeah, just look up Warhammer developer or something, or game. I don't know. Games Workshop, I think. I don't know.
I don't know. Publishers, Feral Interactive.
Well, that's Sega. The game. Oh. That's the video game. My point being is they're licensed.
Creative Assembly, Feral Interactive.
That's the hang on. I think it is Games Workshop.
My Twitter is going absolutely bonkers right now.
It is, yeah, Games Workshop. So they're licensed to use the Warhammer stuff because of Games Workshop. And so the Total War used to allow insane modding in their old games. The Warhammer game had to cut back because they can't allow everything in their licensed game. I think because they're licensed by Wizards, they might have to say, we can allow you to mod almost everything, but you can't like add in a whole new this or a whole new that type of stuff.
I'm just so excited because while Foundry and whatnot is super cool, it's so tough to develop it perfectly unless you're like working and making money from it and running games for people that way. But Divinity Original Sin 2, their GM mode wasn't amazing, but being able to have a full ass character creator and mechanics baked into something, I'd be super excited. So get your new players in to say, hey, look at my Baldur's Gate 3. Let's go play through there. It'd be pretty cool. I ain't got nothing else to say.
And if we got anything wrong, make sure you tweet us.
At Dungeon Crawl Pod on Twitter and Instagram. We've been posting, Ryan has been posting a little bit more of us doing random shit on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's basically like our Scuffed story where we're just like, hey, this is where we're doing random shit. Come hang out with us. IRL Twitter. If you want to chat with us, that's probably the best way to do it. DMs, we post notifications when our posts come out, our videos come out, whether that be this one, the Dungeon Crawl that you're listening to, or the Dungeon Chronicles, our actual play podcast. If you want to send us an email, thedungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com is the way to do that. And then Discord, if you want to join in our community, where I unfortunately had to relinquish my hold in some of these games. I was playing 4 tabletop RPGs at once.
Back to back.
They all lined up this weekend, and I went, I need to stop, because I would have woken up, played tabletop RPG for 4 hours, take a little break, another 4 hours, sleep, and repeat for literally almost every day that week.
It's hard to say no to fun things.
So there's a me-sized hole in some of these games. If you want to come in here and
big size hole.
I am putting on a little bit of weight.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if you want to join, there's a link in the description. The link tree will take you to a bunch of other things, including a Patreon. If you feel like supporting us, there's a couple of tiers for you to provide any sort of monetary support for us to eventually finally ship this over to my place, which for you, this will be a promise. Because next week it'd be literally impossible for not to have enough for the thing that we need to get to move our studio over. Within the next 2 episodes.
It's coming soon.
And then in October, it's one of those months where if you get paid bi-weekly, you get an extra paycheck. So I'm excited for that.
October, we might for sure have a new change of scenery.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. And then there's a tier above the dungeon crawlers and above. Squid is one of them. Has been a supporter that we would like to shout out. Haven't heard from him a bit. Hope he's doing okay.
Love you, buddy.
Love you, bud. Ryan, I'm done.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
I got in there. Yeah, we're tired.
We're getting pretty long here, kind of.
Oh, really?
I don't know, somewhat. But we will see you guys next time. Oh, make sure you rate us 5 stars. Sorry, I didn't give enough weight, though. I didn't give enough weight. If you enjoyed the podcast, rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. It really does help us out a lot. I was informed by one of our lovely viewers that if you're on like Android or something,
so annoying. You can't do
it. Very hard to do. So
it is.
I appreciate the effort. If you're unable to do that for whatever reason, or it's too much effort, just hit the thumbs up on this video. Write a comment if you're feeling spicy, and that'll also help us out a lot. Because we just hit, unless one of you guys unsubscribes, we just hit 150 subs.
Oh, shit.
150.
And speaking of that too, if you ever were wondering, like I used to stream a bit ago. There's been a bit of a change with that. I will mention, keep things like separate and anonymous. I've mentioned VTubers and whatnot in the past that I'm super into them. It's the same Twitter, the same Twitch and whatnot. If you like supporting me over there, go do it. Just don't mention me or this. But if you do, not that big of a deal, but I might slap you on the hand. If you feel like hanging out with me, that'll start probably the first week of October. But yeah, we're all set. Thanks for hanging with us.
See you guys next week.
He's been Ryan.
He's been Braxton.
This is Dungeon Crawl. Thanks for crawling with us. Got a good episode for you next week.
Yeah, it's always a good episode next week.
Thanks for chilling for this one. We were a little sleepy, but it's nice to just sit down and chat.
I still see you.
Done.
Yeah, hell yeah, we're done, dude. Get the hell out of here. We're done.
I got a raid.